Alma Angeles. You're watching Eagle News International. Good evening, CJ.
Good evening, Alma, and good evening to everyone joining the broadcast. Here are tonight's headlines.
North Korea test-fired a new long-range cruise missile over the weekend, according to state media, with the United States saying the nuclear-armed country was threatening its neighbors and beyond.
Well, I believe
North Korea's reported firing of a cruise missile was a signal to the Americans, which meant to be noticeable but not too strong.
Health authorities have detected 640 more cases of the transmissible Delta variant here in the country, the dominant variant in the country, for a total tally of 2,708.
And being disrupted by hecklers while serving for the match only made Daniil Medvedev's first Grand Slam title that much sweeter when it came Sunday at the expense of Novak Djokovic in the U.S. Open final.
First in our news, North Korea test-fired a new long-range cruise missile over the weekend. State media reported Monday, with the United States saying the nuclear-armed country was threatening its neighbors and beyond. Pictures in the Rodong Sinmo newspaper showed a missile exiting one of 5 tubes on a launch vehicle in a ball of flame and a missile in horizontal flight. Such a weapon would represent a marked advance in North Korea's weapons technology, according to analysts, better able to avoid defense systems to deliver a warhead across the South or Japan, both of them U.S. allies. The official Korean Central News Agency said the test launches took place on Saturday and Sunday. Jeffrey Lewis of the Middlebury Institute for International Studies tweeted that the reported missiles would be capable of delivering a warhead against targets throughout South Korea and Japan. The South Korean military, normally the first source of information on the North's missile tests, had made no announcement of any launches over the weekend. They said they were analyzing developments, while Tokyo's chief government spokesman Katsunobu Kato told reporters that a 1,500-kilometer range missile would pose a threat to the peace and security of Japan and the surrounding region.
In a related news, North Korea's reported firing of a cruise missile was a signal to the Americans, which meant to be noticeable but not too strong, says Andrei Lankov, director of the Korea Risk Group. The missiles traveled 1,500 kilometers, or about 930 miles, 2-hour flight paths, including figure of 8 patterns above North Korea and its territorial waters to hit their targets, according to KCNA. Its report called the missile a strategic weapon of great significance, adding the tests were successful and it gave the country another effective deterrence means against hostile forces. Take a look.
Well, I believe that this particular test was deliberately calibrated not to worry Americans too much. It was a signal. It was basically a signal to the Americans, which meant to be noticeable but not too strong. There are good reasons to believe that right now there is some preparation for a new round of talks. And North Koreans would like these talks to start sooner, rather sooner than better, than later, because they are in a difficult situation because of sanctions. That the North Korean diplomacy has been remarkably successful. Normally, not always, but in most cases, they got what they needed. First, no matter what, North Korea will never ever surrender nuclear weapons. No promises of economic prosperity, no threats are going to change it.
Here in the country, the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council on Sunday said a total of 17 people now died during the onslaught of Typhoon Julina last week. Now, 7 people are also missing, while 24 others were injured, according to the NDRRMC report. The NDRRMC also said 313,373 people, 81,048 families, and 1,346 barangays were affected by the typhoon. A total of 181 areas in Region 3, Calabarzon, Mimaropa, Region 5, Region 6, 7, and 8 experienced flash floods or flooding, while 13,061 persons from Calabarzon, Mimaropa, and Region 8 were preemptively evacuated. Meanwhile, 36 cities and municipalities experienced power outages or interruptions in Calabarzon, Mimaropa, Region 5, 6, and 8. Power has been restored in 35 cities and municipalities. 7 cities and municipalities experienced water supply outages or interruptions in Calabarzon, Mimaropa, but water supply has been restored in 2 cities and municipalities. There were 93 infrastructures damaged with an estimated cost of 57,261,053. The cost of assistance provided has also gone up to 1,329,189.
In other news, a wildfire broke out Saturday in a mountainous terrain near Castaic. Authorities said it threatened structures and prompted the California Highway Patrol to close a stretch of the 5 freeway in both directions. The U.S. Forest Service said the blaze had grown to nearly 400 acres, with 2 of its firefighters sustaining burn injuries. According to the Los Angeles Times, shortly after 9 p.m., the CHP, or California Highway Patrol, had reopened 2 lanes of the freeway in each direction. Meanwhile, deputies in the sheriff's Santa Clarita Valley station reported that the threat to structures appeared to have been mitigated.
Meanwhile, a huge fire has ravaged the forest in Sierra Bermeja Mountains in the southern Spanish province of Malaga, forcing mass evacuations, including to a sports center set up to house evacuees from neighboring towns. Take a look.
A 5.2 magnitude quake shook Iran's northeast, the country's seismological agency said, but there were no immediate reports of damage or casualties. Now, the moderate quake struck at 8:32 a.m. local time, or 4:02 GMT, near the city of Kuchan in Razavi, Khorasan province, at a depth of 6 kilometers or 3.7 miles. It rattled the provincial capital, Mashhad, Iran's second largest city, near the border with Turkmenistan. The Iranian Red Crescent reported it had placed rescue teams on alert, but did not immediately report casualties or damage. The United States Geological Survey reported the quake as having a 5.1 magnitude. Iran, located at the intersection of several tectonic plates, is a zone of high seismic activity.
Back here in the country, health authorities have detected 640 more cases of the more transmissible Delta, the dominant variant in the country, for a total tally of 2,708. Now, in a statement, the DOH said, aside from the Delta variant, also detected were cases of the Alpha variant 24, Beta variant 28, and the Theta variant 5. based on the latest whole genome sequencing report by the University of the Philippines, Philippine Genome Center, and the University of the Philippines National Institutes of Health. 584 of the 640 new Delta cases are local cases, 52 are returning overseas Filipino or ROF, and 4 cases are currently being verified if these are local or ROF cases. Meantime, of the new 24 Alpha variant cases detected, about 23 were local cases and 1 is an ROF.
The country's total number of recovered COVID-19 cases has now reached 2,032,471 after 22,290 new recoveries were reported today. In its latest case bulletin, the Department of Health noted that recoveries account for 90.4% of the total case count of 2,248,071 since the start of the pandemic last year. Meanwhile, some 20,745 new infections brought the total number of active cases nationwide to 180,293. About 86% of these active cases are mild, 9.4% are asymptomatic, 0.6% are critical, and 1.4% are severe, while 2.62% are moderate. The DOH also logged 163 new deaths, pushing the country's total number of COVID-19 fatalities to 35,307.
The classrooms here in the country are empty as millions of school children hunker down at home for a second year of remote lessons that experts fear will worsen an educational crisis. Take a look.
There are more negative effects of keeping the school closed. Learning loss, decreasing enrollments, eventually dropout. Some of the children might never return to school. In terms of the psychological and social emotional impact on the children that are not having the opportunity to interact with their teachers and their parents in person.
Ay, hindi ko po siya pinapagawa ng gawaing bahay tuwing may siyang lesson. Bali po, nakapokus lang po siya doon. Gawin niya lang po yung dapat niyang gawin para yung suporta ko sa kanya sa gawaing bahay ay hindi ko na po pinapagawa. Kumbaga, opo.
Mas mahirap.
Kasi po, kung sasabayan po noon, ay hindi po talaga nila magagawa nga ng mas mahirap po ang online or modular kaysa doon sa face-to-face na natuturo ng teacher ng mas malinaw.
The Philippines is planning to offer a third dose of vaccines in October or November to healthcare workers, according to vaccine czar Carlito Balvez. Let's listen in.
Pagka once na nakita natin na sizable na yun natin, maybe by end of October, we can start siguro by end of October or November. 12 and 17 ang unahin natin. Initial ng NITAG is mauuna muna yung dependents ng A1 na mga healthcare workers. Second, yung mga may comorbidities. Ang unahin muna natin yung 12 and 17.
Announced more supplies of Pfizer, Moderna, and AstraZeneca vaccines will be delivered in the coming months. The country has accumulated 56,794,130 doses so far. Galvez said the provision of booster shots to healthcare workers is under review by authorities and vaccine experts. The government, he added, is also working on the procurement of the reformulated booster jabs, which produce more potent antibody response against highly contagious variants like Delta.
Onerous virus lockdown rules were relaxed for fully vaccinated Sydney residents today, with small groups allowed to meet for picnics for the first time in months. But many stringent restrictions are still in place. Take a look.
Yeah, I think with the restrictions easing today, it gives me a greater peace of mind that we can go out and we're allowed to get together, 5 people who are fully vaccinated. Makes it a lot easier.
It's great. I can catch up and be with more mates, but I'd love to see both my kids. I haven't been able to see my daughter in over 2 months, and she only lives 10 kilometres from here. And that's actually been probably the toughest thing for me in the lockdown. I think a lot of people, just not being able to see your family, you know, whether they're 20 kilometres away or 2,000 kilometres. It's tough.
The rules remain strict, with just 5 fully vaccinated people allowed to gather outdoors for up to an hour, while tougher rules are in place for virus hotspots. Across Sydney, a 5-kilometre or 3-mile travel limit remains in place. Stay-at-home orders are set to be lifted for the fully vaccinated across Sydney and surrounding New South Wales state when the double-dose vaccination rate hits 70%, likely in October, based on current trends.
Denmark, meanwhile, on Friday became the only European nation with no COVID curbs, losing a requirement to show vaccine passports to enter nightclubs as it cautiously embraces a return to normal. Take a look.
It feels good that the restrictions are gone again. I haven't really noticed it yet, but I don't really go to nightclubs either. But I guess the people who do are really happy about it.
I think it's great that Denmark is lifting their restrictions today. Makes it much easier to travel with the metro and so on and so forth, and it's just great to be back to normal.
I think I do feel safe because I think most of the people in Denmark, I think they are vaccinated, and also I think it's more about like how you handle the hygiene, and if you're trying to be careful about the hygiene, washing your hands and try to keep a distance. So I think there is no need for that many restrictions anyway. So yeah, I think it's good that we don't have restrictions anymore.
The thing about Denmark lifting our restrictions doesn't really make that big of a change for me. I don't really go to nightclubs anymore. I have a pretty busy schedule. Our mask was gone a long time ago, so don't think about that anymore. At that point, I was actually working in a cafe, so I was working with the mask on every single day. So I think in my head, Denmark actually lifted the restrictions way back. So it doesn't really make a change for me.
New infections have eased off in Denmark as vaccine rates have climbed, reaching over 70% of the overall population. But as the Scandinavian country looked ahead to a new post-pandemic reality, the WHO warned that vaccines alone may not end the pandemic and the virus could be around for years. Denmark made third doses available to vulnerable groups as of Thursday, and the health minister said vaccines played an important role in helping the country return to normal. But he struck a cautious note. Magnus Hunicki said Friday, daily life is basically back to normal, but that does not mean there won't be any danger down the road.
Meanwhile, all travelers except returning overseas Filipino or ROFs via repatriation programs and special commercial flights from 9 countries are prohibited from entering the Philippines. That is from September 12 to September 18. Here's presidential spokesperson Harry Roque.
Inaprubahan po ni Presidente Rodrigo Duterte ang travel restrictions mga bansa o lugar na nasa ilalim sa red list. Kasama rito ang Azerbaijan, Guadeloupe, Guam, Israel, Kosovo, Montenegro, North Macedonia, St. Lucia at Switzerland. Lahat ng mga pasaherong manggagaling sa binanggit kong red list countries, 14 na araw bago dumating ng bansa ay bawal makapasok sa Pilipinas effective kahapon, Linggo, September 12, 2021, 12 noon hanggang September 18, 2021, 11:59 p.m. Manila time. Hindi kasama sa ban ang mga bumabalik na Pilipino via government-initiated or non-government repatriation programs at special commercial flights na pinapayagan sa existing IATF resolutions. Kailangan ng RT-PCR testing sa ikapitong araw kung saan ang day of arrival ay day 1. Kailangan makumpleto ang 10-day facility-based quarantine kahit nag-negatibo pa sa swab test. Kung inyong matatandaan, una kami naglabas ng green list na binuo ng 33 countries, jurisdictions, or territories. Naka-flash sa inyong screen ang mga ito. Ang mga bansang wala sa green at red list ay nasa yellow list. Balikan natin ang yellow, red, and green classifications ay nakabase sa incidence rates at case counts at testing data. Sa red list po, ito ang high risk. Merong incidence rate na mahigit sa 500 sa populasyong mahigit sa 100,000 at COVID-19 case counts na mahigit 500 sa populasyon na less than 100,000. Kapag 50 to 500 ang incidence rate sa populasyon mahigit sa 100,000 at COVID-19 case count na 50 to 500 sa populasyon na less than 100,000, ito po ay nasa moderate risk or yellow list. Kung mas mabababa sa 50 ang incidence rate at case count, ito ay nasa green list. Samantala, naglabas ng pahayag po sa Executive Secretary Salvador Medialdea noong Sabado, September 11, sa nangyaring pagdinig sa Senado.
Staying here in the Philippines, where Executive Secretary Salvador Medialdea urged senators to just file the necessary cases against the government over the alleged overpriced COVID-19 pandemic purchases instead of wasting officials' time. A surge has been going on for several days now, and yet key officials in charge of protecting our people from this surge are being required to attend hearings for an alleged grand plunder, Medialdea said. Now, as of Friday, Medialdea said 5 hearings have been conducted and another hearing is set again today. Medialdea said the hearings have taken up so much time of officials directly involved in government's COVID-19 pandemic response. This at a time when the country is struggling to arrest a surge in infections, topping 20,000 daily in recent days. Medialdea said the ongoing Senate hearings have to date shown nothing to prove their case except to surround it with speculations drawn from bullying of resource persons, most of whom have already been criminally condemned without due process. He urged senators to go over the provisions of the Bayanihan Law, noting that it already provides for the office of the president to render a weekly report to the Senate and the House for all purchases and all other activities related to the pandemic.
And the news continues here on Able News. We'll be right back.
This portion is brought to you by North Luzon Express Terminal.
Mula noon hanggang ngayon, gabay natin ang MTRCB ratings sa matalino at responsableng panonood. Sa tamang pagsunod sa MTRCB ratings, ginagawa nating ligtas at makabuluhan ang panonood ng bawat miyembro ng pamilyang Pilipino. Lumipas man ang panahon, hanggang may pamilyang Pilipino, andyan ang MTRCB.
Good vibes kada umaga to get you through your day with a happy heart.
Tropical cyclone o bagyo. Ang bagyo ay isang uri ng lagay na panahon na nagdudulot ng malalakas at mabibilis na hangin at pag-ulan na maaaring maging sanhi ng matitinding pagbaha, daluyong ng dagat at pag-uho ng lupa. Narito ang mga dapat gawin bago dumating ang bagyo. Una, alamin ang balita ukol sa panahon at mga anunsyong pangkaligtasan. Alamin ang plano ng komunidad sa pagbibigay babala at paglikas. Suriin ang bahay at kumpunihin ang mga mahina at sirang bahagi. Ihanda ang gobag na naglalaman ng mga pangangailangan ng pamilya. Ilikas ang mga alagang hayop sa ligtas na lugar. Kapag inabisuhan ang kinauukulan, mabilis na lumikas sa itinakdang evacuation center. Narito naman ang mga dapat gawin habang may bagyo. Una, maging mahinahon. Manatili sa loob ng bahay o evacuation center at makinig sa pinakabagong balita at taya ng panahon. Patayin ang main switch ng kuryente at valve ng tubig. Gumamit ng flashlight o emergency lamp. Maging maingat sa paggamit ng kandila o gasera. Umiwas sa mga salaming bintana. Ito naman ang dapat gawin pagkatapos ng bagyo. Hintayin ang abiso ng kinauukulan na ligtas ng bumalik sa tahanan. Umiwas sa mga natumbang puno, nasirang gusali at linya ng kuryente. Huwag gumala upang hindi maabala ang mga emergency services. Siguraduhing walang basa o nakababad na outlet o kagamitan bago buksan ang linya ng kuryente. Itapon ang mga naipong tubig sa lata, paso at gulong upang hindi pamahayan ng lamok.
Welcome back. The tribute in light shines once again as a memorial to the victims of the terror attacks on September 11, 2001. Here's Joanne Soriano for the report.
The Tribute in Lights, an annual public art installation, once again shone brightly on the night of September 11th, as a remembrance to honor the nearly 3,000 lives lost and as a symbol of the resilient spirit of New Yorkers. The Tribute in Light stretches 4 miles high into the sky, representing the Twin Towers, which were attacked on September 11, 2001. The beams of light are lit from dusk till dawn and can be seen from 60 miles away. The lights are assembled on the roof of the Battery parking garage, a few blocks south of the 9/11 memorial. The beams are made up of 88 xenon light bulbs and positioned into two 48-foot squares to represent the shape and orientation of the original World Trade Center towers, which were an iconic part of the downtown New York City skyline. A ceremony was held earlier, but on this 20th anniversary of September 11, the mood was especially somber. Mourners, family members, and visitors gathered throughout the day at the 9/11 memorial and reflecting pools to pay their respects and place flowers and flags on the names of the victims. The names of the people who were killed in the 2001 and 1993 terrorist attacks are inscribed around two memorial pools. The pools are meant to reflect absence and sits in the actual footprints of the former towers. In New York, Joanne Soriano, Eagle News. We live in interesting times.
In remembrance of the 20th anniversary of the 9/11 terror attacks, Hawaii state officials sponsored a virtual gathering that included cultural numbers and messages of hope from various communities. Alfred Asenas from our EBC Hawaii Pacific personally attended the event and files this report. Take a look.
In the midst of, sorry, I just couldn't help but be emotional after listening to that heartfelt rendition.
Over a dozen representatives from government, faith-based groups, schools, and other organizations took part in a virtual gratitude prayer rally hosted by the state government of Hawaii in commemoration of the 20th anniversary of the tragic events of September 11, 2001. With local news anchor Annalisa Burgos as master of ceremonies, each representative took turns in rendering messages of positivity and encouragement. Elected officials who graced the said occasion included State Senator and event organizer Benet Misalucha.
Even though we come from various ethnic groups, speak different languages, practice religion or no religion, there is more that binds us than divides us. We are all Americans. It's because in the midst of great horrors, faced with the knowledge that our lives have been forever altered, for many of us, it was faith that got us through adversity. Faith in ourselves, faith in humanity, and most importantly, faith in God. But it also brought out the best people. When faced with the greatest tragedy, people stood united and gained strength from each other. They helped each other. Kindness prevailed. That's what communities are all about.
Meanwhile, Hawaii Governor David Ige took to social media to deliver his own message.
Like many residents in Hawaii who woke up to the horror unfolding in New York City, I too will always remember this day for the nearly 3,000 Americans who perished. Their legacy is now etched in our collective memory and will live on through stories passed down to future generations. We owe our brave first responders a debt of gratitude for continuing to serve our community through times of crisis, including the current COVID-19 pandemic.
Out of the nearly 3,000 lives that were lost on that day, at least 6 had strong ties to the Aloha State. Reporting from Honolulu, Hawaii, Alfred Asena's Eagle News, we live in interesting times.
Meanwhile, the FBI released the first declassified document related to the September 11, 2001 attacks following President Biden's order earlier this month. Now, the heavily redacted 16-page report describes an FBI interview in 2015 where the man who had contact with Saudi Arabian nationals who helped support 2 of the hijackers in the U.S. before the attacks. The documents include details of the unnamed man's work for the Saudi consulate in Los Angeles. It didn't offer a clear direct link between the Saudi government and the hijackers. Saudi Arabia denies any role in the September 11 attacks, and the families are still hoping for stronger evidence when more classified material is released inside the next 6 months based on a President Biden order.
George W. Bush, who was president during 9/11, says at a service marking 20 years since the attacks that disunity today makes him worried about the future of the United States. Watch this.
In the weeks and months following the 9/11 attacks, I was proud to lead an amazing, resilient, united people. When it comes to the unity of America, those days seem distant from our own. Malign force seems at work in our common life that turns every disagreement into an argument and every argument into a clash of cultures. So much of our politics has become a naked appeal to anger, fear, and resentment. That leaves us worried about our nation and our future together.
We saw after 9/11 how fear can be used to sow division in our nation. As Sikh and Muslim Americans were targeted because of how they looked or how they worshiped. But we also saw what happens when so many Americans, in the spirit of our nation, stand in solidarity with all people and their fellow American, with those who experience violence and discrimination.
In the related news, Afghan women will now be allowed to attend university as long as they study separately from men, the Taliban's new higher education minister said on Sunday. Now, women's rights in Afghanistan were sharply curtailed under the Taliban's rule 1996 to 2001. Though since returning to power last month, the hardline Islamists have claimed they will implement a less extreme rule. Take a look.
ड्रेस कोड दे जामे
موږ ورته دا وی چې د مخلوط تعلیم د ختمولو طرحه تاسې جوړه کړئ. د خصوصي پوهنتونونو اتحادیه د هغې سره مجلس وشو، د دولتي پوهنتونونو د مشرانو سره مجلس وشو.
In other news, Nigerian gunmen have freed dozens of school children kidnapped earlier this month in northwest Zamfara state, according to a local government source and a video showing state officials with the children. In the release of the Kaya school students on Sunday came after the army began a crackdown on criminal gangs in the state, and local authorities shut down telecoms in Zamfara to disrupt communications between armed groups. More than 70 students and some teachers were snatched in Kaya on September 1st, and the latest in a series of mass abductions at schools and colleges this year by heavily armed gunmen known locally as bandits. A video released by Zamfara State Governor Bello Matawale's office showed him greeting buses full of students in the night and asking them if they had been harmed. According to security sources and the local source, their captors had released them in exchange for safe passage out of the forest as the army had surrounded their camp. Since December, the bandit gangs have also increasingly targeted schools for abductions, and more than 1,000 students have been kidnapped over this year in a string of raids. Most of those students have been released after negotiations, and some escaped, but dozens are still being held in forest hideouts by their bandit captors. Eagle News will be back with more stories. Please don't go away.
Innovation, digital disruption, globalization. Startups, micro, small, and medium enterprises, as well as large corporations, all face interesting challenges in the market today. Peek into the world of exciting opportunities and partnerships to drive growth with the latest business news and information. We are open for business. Your weekly dose of entrepreneurial inspiration to update you on the latest developments in the world of business. Get up close and personal with CEOs and thought leaders to help you discover valuable insights. Sharpen your instincts for smart decision-making with the latest markets and economic trends, disruptive ideas, global innovation, social entrepreneurship, and other leading-edge business ideas. Join the conversations to create a more vibrant environment for entrepreneurship. Catch Open for Business, from vision to action.
Malalayong lugar ang kanilang narating para maghanap buhay. Tulungan ang pamilyang iniwan sa sariling bayan. Yan ang ating mga overseas Filipino worker. Pero dahil sa di pangkaraniwang pangyayaring hatid ay krisis, may ilan sa kanilang nagpasyang umuwi. Pinagyaman ang sariling lupain, nagtayo ng negosyo na kasama sa puhunan ang sipag at tiyaga. Ang mga OFW, maraming sakripisyo, ninanais maging kapaki-pakinabang maging sa kanilang pagbabalik bansa. Sapagkat ang ating mga bagong bayani, Pilipino pa rin sa puso at damdamin.
Presidential Advisor for Entrepreneurs, Sip and Go Negosyo founder Joey Concepcion underscored the high stakes in finding a way to live with COVID-19, which would in turn allow the resumption of economic activity. The Go Negosyo founder reiterated that the granular lockdown approach is the right idea in terms of the government's response. Take a look.
But as we face this serious surge, the challenge right now is that we have to try to learn how to live with COVID, even with this surge ongoing. But as we know, vaccines are important. The evidence of taking the vaccine is a passport. And what eventually, if we can merge these three formats right now, the format one is the LGU Bakuna card that we get. So this is basically the Bakuna card that we have. And this is the next one below is the certificate of vaccination record, and of course the BOQ, which there's a lot of people now going after this yellow passport, which looks much better. Of course, Chairman Avalos has been very helpful in this effort to really look at giving more mobility to our vaccinated people to be able to enter higher risk establishments. Basically restaurants, salons, spas, etc. The country cannot continue locking down forever. I mean, that's going to be a very challenging scenario. I don't think local government and national government can sustain that kind of a model. Where will we get the money? I mean, to be able to pay the salaries of our people in the LGUs, where will the national government be able to fund all of these vaccines that will be, endless? I'm assuming that this will continue to remain as a problem for the coming years. Hopefully, we can move from a pandemic to an endemic mode. And as we do that, it's very important, as Secretary Chua says, that the documentation of these passports have to be continuous. So with the breakthrough happening in most of the vaccines, herd immunity is not possible. So we have to target 90 to 100% of our Filipino people being vaccinated. So if we want to open up the economy safely and allow businesses to start moving, the hospitals cannot get filled up. The moment that gets filled up, then the government will put the brake and we will have a lockdown. So as we try to shift to a granular approach in all these efforts,
In other news, a Pakistan International Airlines jet touches down in Kabul before making a return flight to Islamabad. This is the first international commercial flight to leave Kabul since the Taliban retook power last month, offering some hope to Afghans still desperate to leave the country. Take a look.
I feel very comfortable. This is just like coming to a place where I have to retrieve people. So this is a great moment for me after a long time since the changeover of the establishment in Kabul. The arrangements are in good shape, although we face some difficulties in getting clearances and the rest of it. But at the end of the day, it was well coordinated. Inshallah, be a schedule that we will publish for normal routine flights, regular passenger transport, which is what we really want.
Around 70 people were on the flight to the Pakistani capital, mostly Afghans who were relatives of staffers with international organizations such as the World Bank, according to airport ground staff. Many NATO nations admitted that they had run out of time to evacuate thousands of at-risk Afghans before the withdrawal deadline agreed between the United States and the Taliban. A PIA spokesman said at the weekend that the airline was keen to resume regular commercial services, but it was too soon to say how frequently flights between the two capitals would operate.
And being disrupted by hecklers while serving for the match only made Daniil Medvedev's first Grand Slam title that much sweeter when it came Sunday at the expense of Novak Djokovic in the US Open Finals. World number 2 Medvedev ripped top-ranked Djokovic 6-4, 6-4, 6-4 to deny the Serbian star the first Grand Slam sweep since 1969 and a men's record 21st career major title. The breakthrough came in Medvedev's third slam final after losses to Rafael Nadal in the 2019 US Open final and Djokovic in February's Australian Open final. It also came after some spectators tried to disrupt him as he served for the match in the final set. Medvedev double faulted on 2 match points before hitting a service winner for the triumph. Medvedev has never been ranked higher than second, but there's a sense his slam breakthrough might inspire a fight to claim the number 1 spot one day.
Finally, in our news, Philippine actor John Arcilla was the surprise choice for the Best Actor Award in the Venice Film Festival on Saturday. The 55-year-old took home the prize for his starring role in On the Job, The Missing 8, a crime thriller that delves into corruption and fake news. Though presented as a film at the festival, it is due to be cut into a 6-part miniseries for HBO. Arcilla stars as a radio host forced to rethink his support for the Philippine government after a series of assassinations. He eventually transforms into a gun-toting revolutionary in a role described by The Hollywood Reporter as pure fantasy. The film is a sequel to the 2013 film On the Job by director Eric Mati, which was a huge success in the Philippines, telling the story of prisoners used by the government as hitmen. Little known internationally, Arcilla has won multiple awards at home for his work on TV and film. He is perhaps best known for playing General Luna, a 2015 biopic about legendary 19th century military commander Antonio Luna.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. We're very proud of you. And of course, we're always looking forward to more works like that from our local directors and local film outfits. There you go. And that's it for tonight's broadcast. Thank you so much for joining us. I am CJ Hero. The news continues tomorrow.
And at the end of the day, there remains so much more to be grateful for. I'm Alma Angeles, and
we live
in interesting times.